and enacting change.
Might seem like the die is cast already, but every one of those Senate seats remaining, the more Republicans can get in that majority, the more it bolsters Donald Trump when it comes time to confirm a cabinet, when it comes time for a possible Supreme Court nomination. To get all his legislation through. Every race means something right now. So we'll watch Michigan, we'll watch Pennsylvania, Nevada. They all have currency and leverage for Donald Trump, who on January 6, 2025, will have his election certified by Vice President Harris. I can't get past the human story here. There may be no more polarizing political figure in modern times, but I think everybody can reflect on 116 days ago. Got shot at a rally. I was there in Butler, Pennsylvania. Any number of people I met at that rally, we still carry some of that with us. It was a seminal moment in our lives to be ducking bullets at a Secret Service protected rally. He got hit by one and kept going to the rallies, kept walking out on that stage to those microphones. You mix that with his brand of being a fighter and having courage, that iconic image, pumping up that fist, blood dripping down his face. Hard to imagine that didn't have an outsized impact, and not just in Western Pennsylvania.
That photo was by the Associated Press's Evan Vucci, Trump's fist in the air. It was put on T-shirts by Trump supporters, hats.
Ads.
It was on the billboards of other candidates and yard signs of other candidates trying to associate themselves with him, saying, I'm a fighter like. And it was, their heads were small and his picture was large.
It also gave him the opportunity, Donald Trump, to say, which I think resonated with many of his supporters, that God had chosen him to survive that assassination attempt. And while some people recoiled at him saying that, it was another emotional connection for Donald Trump with his supporters.
And he gave his speech tonight in West Palm Beach, where it should be underscored, there's another person charged with assassination attempt September 14th on that Sunday while he was golfing at that same area where he gave his speech tonight. That's an apolitical way of connecting with Americans, and it's hard to imagine that didn't have an impact.
And Margaret Brennan, the president has said, promises made, promises kept. He has told his supporters, we will fix it. We'll bring in a golden era. What is his record on that? What's he promising to do?
Well, if you look at what he delivered in the first 4 years versus what he promised, there was a lot that went undelivered. He did deliver on that single legislative achievement that Gary Cohn was the architect of, the tax cuts. But when it came to, for example, building the wall and having Mexico pay for it, it was something like, just a few miles. You have all sorts of different things that were on his to-do list that he did not achieve. Now, being president and dealing with the circumstances you are handed, such as COVID, was pretty extraordinary. There were things that he actually did achieve that he didn't trumpet on the campaign trail because of the interesting dynamic we have in our politics right now. He could have come out there and said, yes, I was handed COVID, but I delivered you a vaccine because I harnessed, science and business and the great minds and leadership of America. He didn't do that. He played more towards some of these things that enrage, that anger, and by the way, apparently galvanize people enough to get in a car and show up and vote on November the 5th. I think we have to all take time to digest this. We're doing it in the moment, but I don't think we are all quite grasping the gravity of sending Donald Trump back to Washington with the word you use, Nora, a mandate. It's not just the man. It is a mandate. They have control in a significant way of Senate and possibly the House. We may not know that definitively for a little bit of time, but this is a really interesting message being sent by the electorate tonight.
All presidents want to act, and they are frustrated in office by a number of things. Tradition, that you can't do that because previous presidents haven't done it. They're frustrated by having to get reelected, so they have to be careful about the voters. They're frustrated in some cases about, well, that's illegal, Mr. President. You can't do that, so you shouldn't do it. And then finally, in the most extreme cases, by political censure, by impeachment. All four of those latches are unhooked for Donald Trump. He faces none of those limitations. And he also is, in our modern presidency, the president who has been most easily he has most easily indulged his own id, his own personal desires in using power in his office.
The argument that Kamala Harris and her supporters made is that Donald Trump is unstable, unhinged, and unchecked because of the immunity. That message was used after the many of his former, his chief of staff in particular, said that he was a fascist, that he was dangerous, that he was a threat to national security. And the voters today have returned him to office with a mandate, despite those judgments of people who have 4 stars on their shoulders and worked closely with him for several years.
It's not even despite sometimes.
Yeah.
It's without,
in spite of.
or without any consideration in a deliberate decision to ignore it. One thing we have to acknowledge, I believe, as reporters, is that on the campaign trail, so many voters do not care about how Trump's behavior and conduct are characterized by his critics or those who believe they are guardrails for American democracy. They are sharply dismissive when the points are raised by journalists and by others. Yeah. This is a fact I have encountered constantly as a reporter. Dismissive. And when you bring up all these different data points about character, conduct, and about how presidential norms have been established for over 2 centuries in American political life, there's a pushback against that kind of assertion about norms, constitution, a constitutional system, and even the rule of law. What we have to also, I think, acknowledge as reporters is we are entering a new moment in America that is volatile, where you do not have an acceptance, broadly speaking, of how the rule of law is defined in the United States and how the Constitution is defined.
How broad is this mandate, which he is now claiming? Because think of some of the things he said openly during the end of this campaign about military tribunals for his congressional critics, about stripping licenses from broadcasters, about, at some point, deporting millions of people in short order. Can he put that all beneath the umbrella of, I've got a mandate, I said this aloud before you went to vote?
And is that the kind of radical change that his supporters think is necessary?
Yeah,
Yes.
potentially.
We should point out we've heard nothing from the vice president. Her campaign had supporters sent home, what was it, around 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock this morning. We've had no word from the White House as to whether President Biden has been informed, whether he's been up watching, whether he will speak to the world about this later today. The only thing on his schedule right now is a security briefing in the 2 o'clock hour that we expect will still be held, but we'll see if he decides to speak, and then when, if at all, the vice president will speak to supporters, and what even is the protocol? Does she go first and then him? Does he have to go first and then her? We'll see in the coming hours. And so far, nobody at the White House has responded to questions about whether there's going to be a change in the schedule today.
And all this can be traced back to that fateful summer day in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, when he's sitting there with his family and a few key advisors, and he decides to exit the presidential race in the summer. Stunning. And now we end up here with his vice president losing to the one person he detests politically more than anyone.
And I would take this all the way back to late May. Remember, it was Joe Biden who said, let's debate.
Right.
Right? They rolled the dice.
Yes.
2 debates. He accepted, Trump did. Biden
But it was
screwed it
a
up,
devastatingly embarrassing debate
Absolutely.
for the president of the United
This
States.
all traces back to that
Massive
May
miscalculation.
decision.
What a great historical counterfactual. Imagine if Biden doesn't do that debate. Is he still the nominee?
But Trump supporters would say that that proved what Donald Trump had been telling them, which was that Joe Biden wasn't up to it, that he was too old for it.
Yep.
Without realizing the irony of now we have elected the oldest president of the United States in this moment. You know, one thing that is, as we talk about the projection into the world, one thing that was scheduled, has been scheduled for some time, was the testing tonight of an unarmed ICBM test launch in the Pacific.
By
the United States as a show of force to say, don't mess with us. We're going through a political transition. We still have the most fearsome fighting force, most lethal fighting force in the world. We are at a state of readiness. But now we're going to have to see what these remaining few weeks and months of the Biden administration will look like. This is not an insignificant transition. This is a world already in a period looking at a rising China in a way that is not just militarily threatening, but in the American infrastructure, as we continue to learn that with these disclosures, through reporting, by the way, that major telecom companies have been breached, that Chinese-linked hackers are within the infrastructure of telecom and possibly able to access audio of phone calls. I mean, we have had major significant security breaches in ways what haven't really been focused on because we've been focused on the election. These are the things that are going to land on Donald Trump's desk. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with Vladimir Putin? Including reports that the Chinese targeted and attempted hacks into Donald Trump's phone, J.D. Vance's phone, and additional officials. I asked the vice president whether she had been targeted. She would not answer that question to me. I want to bring in Democratic strategist Joel Payne. He has been with us as well all night. And Joel, I want to ask you, what do you think this means for the future of the Democratic Party?
Sure. Well, first, while we're talking about foreign attacks, let's not forget our elections infrastructure were under threat and duress today as well. The FBI talked about all the attempted interventions that Russian state actors tried to make in places like Georgia, and I think that's worth bringing up as well. But just talking about the future of the Democrat Party, you know, I was recently talking to an elected official in the state of Wisconsin. Actually, Leslie and I did on our podcast, Crosstalk Politics, and he foreshadowed kind of the fall off that we saw in the state of Wisconsin with black voters. He talked about how in urban centers, he is of Dane County, and there was folks in Milwaukee who he said just did not feel a connection to the Harris coalition. They did not feel reached out to. They did not feel engaged. It wasn't for lack of trying. It's just that the connection point wasn't there. And there was a bit of a signal. And I know that there are anecdotes like that all across the country within the Democratic Party. Last thing I would say, there was a controversial paid media campaign that the Trump campaign ran after the debate a few weeks ago. It was around transgender, operations for prisoners. And I talked to a national pollster who had eyes on kind of some of the internals in Harris world, and they told me that those ads did real damage to Harris. And I wonder if she was ever able to fully recover from some of the damage. I mean, Trump in that paid media program really went to work on Harris, and it was suggested to me that, what we assume was her coming back from some of those difficult public, or rather coming back from kind of a low point a few weeks ago, was not completed. Like she had a deficit to make up because of the work that the Trump campaign did in those paid media attacks in October, and that was something that a national pollster said to me.
Joel Payne, thank you for your analysis. Final thoughts, Ed O'Keefe.
Well, I think we've learned that $1 billion 100-day quest to win the White House is not enough in either regard. He needed more time and more money, and I think there's going to be a lot of questions asked among Democrats about how it is you lost Latino votes, how it is you lost women, and how it is they need to campaign to a country that is changing and clearly worries much more about its pocketbook than about its identity. It's a devastating loss for Democrats who were convinced they were going to make history, and instead a different kind of history has been made this morning.
Scott McFarland.
For Democrats who want some check on Donald Trump, the vote counting in California and Arizona this week is critical for control of the U.S. House.
He's a political giant, eclipsing Reagan probably in the Republican Party in terms of his influence. He is probably the greatest ego and sense of impulse of any president in the modern era, and has fewer checks now on him when he's in office.
Margaret Brennan.
Nor the irony of a time when we're talking about women's rights at the center of a campaign, and we are now seeing the second woman to lose to Donald Trump in 8 years. And it's something that I think will resonate with a lot of young girls and people around the world who are waiting to see if a female could be commander-in-chief of the most powerful country in the world.
Quickly, I'll end with where I began earlier in the evening. I spoke to Trump. He was so calm before the election returns came in, so calm, confident. This is someone who's ready to take the reins again, in his view, not startled at all by the presidency once again coming to him.
Trump won tonight as 2024 voters were looking for a leader, someone who would bring about change. And according to exit polls, that change for them was bringing back Donald Trump to the White House. He was propelled by a dissatisfied electorate, dissatisfied with the state of the country, the economy, and the impact of inflation. So an incredibly tight campaign ending with a big night for the Republican Party, a night that was expected to last 4 days, instead ends in a victory at daybreak for Donald Trump. CBS News projects that the 45th president will be reelected and become our 47th president of the United States. He will be the oldest president ever elected in American history, only the second man to serve 2 non-consecutive terms. This is a political earthquake in many ways, regaining the office that he held for 4 years. Trump will have the backing of a Republican Senate to help pass his agenda and bring in his cabinet. What we still don't know is who will control the House in this election. Americans made their voices heard. Thank you for watching, and stay with CBS News for the latest election coverage.
Men, remember that time when our eye bags made us look sexy? Yeah, me neither. Now, we can reduce our eye bags by drinking less alcohol, sleeping more, cold compresses, blah, 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 and blah. 1, that's way too much work. And 2, don't worry, there's Particle 6-in-1 face cream for men. All you have to do is wash your face daily and then rub in some Particle for 30 seconds and boom. You'll look a lot less like that guy and a lot more like this guy. Particle 6-in-1 face cream for men. First of its kind anti-aging cream designs.
Dawn's early light, what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets regular, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home
It's in our nature to explore the possibilities and embrace the unknown. We travel the same road, knowing the unexpected may occur. When you need us, we'll be there. If you're injured in a motorcycle accident, call 1-800-LAW-TIGERS, Arizona's motorcycle lawyers.
Are you tired of harassing phone calls from creditors? Bankruptcy can stop the creditors from calling, stop the wage garnishments, stop the lawsuits, and even the IRS. Life is too short to live with this pressure. I've helped thousands.
Arizona's Family, CBS 5.
This will truly be the golden age of America. That's what we have to have. This is a magnificent victory for the American people that will allow us to make America great again.
We welcome you to a special edition of CBS Mornings. Donald Trump will be the 47th president of the United States. That's according to our CBS News projection. Donald Trump is the first president since Grover Cleveland to be elected to non-consecutive terms. He will also become the oldest president ever sworn into office, beating President Biden's mark of 78 years old in 2021 by just a few months.
Trump needed 270 electoral college votes to defeat Vice President Kamala Harris, and he's done it. In the end, the race was not as close as many predicted, with Trump not only beating Harris in key battleground states, but also winning the popular vote, something he's never done before.
And as we showed you at the top, the former president celebrated last night at his Mar-a-Lago estate, along with family, friends, and allies. CBS News projects he will also have help in Congress. The Senate has flipped to Republican control. The House is still a toss-up, and of course, he has a conservative majority on the Supreme Court as well.
Well, Tony DeCopel had a late night and an early morning covering all of this for us. He's across from Mar-a-Lago. He's in West Palm Beach this morning. Tony, good evening, good morning. What can you tell us? What is the latest there?
Gail, you and me both. What a late night and what a moment in American history, really a wow moment in American history. One of the greatest comebacks in political history, as many people put it to me last night. Think about this, a twice impeached, 4 times indicted, once convicted candidate now appears, or is at this point, the president-elect of the United States for a second time. And inside that Trump watch party headquarters, I noticed the first bubbles of excitement, of exuberance around 9 p.m. There was dancing full on the floor by 11 p.m. And after the network started projecting Pennsylvania and then Wisconsin in Donald Trump's favor, pure joy from his supporters. I asked people to summarize how they were feeling in one word. I got one person telling me fantastic, another relieved, still another vindicated. And then, of course, they heard from the now president-elect himself.
We overcame obstacles that nobody thought possible, and it is now clear that we've achieved the most incredible political thing. Look what happened. Is this crazy?
Donald John Trump addressed his supporters just before 2:30 this morning, emerging to a huge round of applause after a night that seemed to break his way early and often.
I want to thank the American people for the extraordinary honor of being elected your 47th president and your 45th president.
I think that we just witnessed the greatest political comeback in the history of the United States of America.
Likely Vice President to be J.D. Vance promised that this political comeback for the ages would now become an economic comeback for America. Trump's crowd of watch night faithful included the CEO of the Ultimate Fighting Championship, Dana White, who called the apparent victory karmic vindication.
This is what happens when the machine comes after you.
Meanwhile, earlier in the night, Vice President Kamala Harris declined to address her own election night watch party at her alma mater, Howard University, leaving her campaign co-director to break the news to an already thinning crowd.
We will continue overnight to fight to make sure that every vote is counted, that every voice has spoken. So you won't hear from the Vice President tonight.
A night that began with cautious optimism curdled into something else entirely after Harris was projected to lose key battleground states like North Carolina and Georgia.
Donald J. Trump has an insurmountable lead.
Georgia, where Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger called the race for Trump before 11 p.m., even as the former president still faces felony charges there for his alleged attempts to overturn Georgia's 2020 results. That is one of several now uncertain cases against Trump, including federal charges tied to his alleged efforts to block certification of the last presidential election. As for what now, well, he said he would fire the special counsel leading that investigation. He's also promised the mass expulsion of undocumented immigrants.
On day one, I will launch the largest deportation program of criminals in American history.
Plus stepped up tariffs on foreign countries, and a public health-related cabinet role for former third-party candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr., a figure known for his anti-vaccine rhetoric. About his famous claim to act like a dictator for a day, his first day in office, that is, well, you can expect him to greenlight more drilling for oil. But for now, as most Americans say the country has been headed in the wrong direction, there was also an appeal to unity.
Because we're going to help our country heal. We're going to help our country heal. We have a country that needs help, and it needs help very badly.
And I'm happy to say that with me here in Florida is our tireless CBS News campaign reporter, Olivier Rinaldi. Olivier, you have one of the hardest jobs on the campaign. You've been following Donald Trump from the very beginning, been to more rallies than I'd say anybody, particularly on the CBS team. You're in a unique position to answer the question on a lot of people's minds right now, which is how did he do this?
Well, they pulled this off with their signature ground game. This is something that started back in Iowa, and it's different than anything we had seen before. The Trump campaign had really deputized people that were their super fans. These were Trump loyalists. These were people that were volunteers that essentially were tasked with going door to door within their communities. And if they reached 10 voters and were able to get them to turn out for Trump, they were given a reward, whether that be a T-shirt, whether that be a hat. The next tier that they would then, if they got 24 voters, they would get expedited entry into a rally. If they got 45 voters, they would get a specific hat, a Trump team captain hat. I would see those when I would go to separate rallies all across the country, these signature white hats. So by doing that, they were really able to tap into local communities using people they know were Trump faithful voters. And by that, they were able to get to those low propensity voters, people that wouldn't typically turn out in a normal election, but able to really galvanize that vote, get them to turn out. And that's where you see that rural vote really, really skyrocketing in this election.
Olivia, I knew the election was going in a direction that was positive for Donald Trump when you told me that you were hearing from inside the campaign and they were looking at the exit polls, quote, gleefully. It certainly ended up that way for him last night. And thank you so much for your work this campaign season. You can now rest, I can say. And I'll send it back to you all in New York as maybe both of us pass out on what has been a very long night. In fact, with that breaking news, you may have noticed in my story, we still hadn't updated the tracks. We're referring to President-elect Donald Trump as still the apparent or likely president-elect. Of course, all that's changed, Vlad.
Indeed, it has. Tony DeCopel tirelessly reporting for us from Florida this morning, where he has been all night. Tony, thank you. We'll talk to you a little bit later. We're joined now by CBS News Director of Elections and Surveys, Anthony Salvanto, and Chief Washington Correspondent, Major Garrett. Good morning to you both. All right. So, fellas, break it down for us. How did Trump pull this off?
So we're going to do a couple of things this morning. Anthony's going to walk through 3 states that so far the former president flipped in this election cycle. And while he does that, he's going to show you some things that are indicative of how that happened. And I'm going to give you some exit poll data while he's doing that to help explain the story. So let's start in Georgia, Anthony.
From the point of view of the data desk, Vlad, it was a story of consistency. Donald Trump hitting his marks with the people that he needed to win. So you can see it on this map, all these rural areas in red. Now what I'm going to show you, now the arrows are going to be big so you can see them on TV, right? But I want to show you the way in which this vote changed from 2020. In many cases across especially rural parts of the state, he did a couple of points better than he did in 2020, hitting his targets with rural voters, evangelical voters. Go for it, Major.
That's where we bring in the exit poll data to reinforce what you're seeing visually here. Among conservative voters, self-identified conservatives, Trump did 4 points better this cycle than 2020. White evangelicals, 5 points better than 2020. White and no college education, about even. But for those first two categories, the arrows and the exit polls tell the story. All right, Anthony, let's go to Pennsylvania.
Yep. Now, everybody had watched this going in, and I want to show you, because we always went out and talked to voters in and around the Philadelphia area and then up into the Lehigh Valley. Again, a lot of white working class voters here, a lot of suburban voters. Now, the key here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the 2020 vote, okay, and compare that in the area, and then watch what happens as Major, I'll hit it.
I'm pointing, he's hitting.
Watch this area here, because it's kind of more red, but in 2020, it was kind of more blue, right? So now it came back a little bit more, lighter red, a little more blue. That tells you that Donald Trump, just enough, swung some of those suburbs this year.
And now let's lay over the exit polls, explain what happened to the Democratic coalition, and it's perfectly illustrated by what you just saw in eastern Pennsylvania. Among Latino voters, Kamala Harris shed support as compared to Joe Biden, President Biden in 2020. Among young voters, didn't do as well as President Biden did in 2020. And even among women, slightly worse in 2024 for Vice President Harris than Joe Biden's performance. That is the cracking of the Democratic coalition, which showed up in lots of battleground states, but most especially it showed up in the leakage seen here in eastern Pennsylvania. Now, let's round this out, Anthony. Let's go to Wisconsin.
Yep. Wisconsin, we called this, well, late into the night, even into the early morning hours. What we were waiting for was Milwaukee, but that's part of the tale here, which is to say that Democrats need to do well in a couple of key counties in Wisconsin, in Dane County around Madison, and then in Milwaukee here. And what you saw, and I'll compare this to 2020, was that Harris got just slightly fewer votes than Joe Biden, but she needed even more because, same story, Donald Trump had run up the score all throughout the rest of the state, again, with that consistency, and that's how he hit his marks.
And an exit poll piece of information that applies to Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. 3 states so far the former president has flipped. For voters who said their finances felt to them worse than 4 years ago, look at that number. 80% for former President Trump, 17% for Vice President Harris. Back to you guys.
All right, Major Anthony, thank you. Ahead, we will break down how Republicans took back control of the Senate and what it could mean for the country. But first, it's time to check the local weather.
Life's busy. Off is not an option. You need to be on. On time, on the go, on the call, or just ready to play on. Life's waiting. Power on with Batteries Plus. Visit one of over 700 locations today.
Weather hits. Your First Alert weather team is there with Storm Commander. No matter the weather, no matter the season.
In the valley and around the state, Storm Commander takes you to the front lines of wild weather.
Sponsored by SRP and only on Arizona's Family.
Batteries Plus has the national scale for all your power needs and a dedicated expert for the local support you want. Power on with Batteries Plus Business.
Eye drop that forms a protective layer for the #1 cause of dry eye, too much tear evaporation. For relief that's... Remove contact lenses before using MyBo. Wait at least 30 minutes before putting them back in. Eye redness and blurred vision may occur. What does treating dry eye differently feel like? for relief that feels. Ask your eye doctor about prescription MyBo.
Remember this? Can't believe we didn't always wear sunscreen.
Let's not regret our sunny memories.
Let's do something about it.
Number 7's Future Renew Serum reverses visible signs of sun damage with a world-first peptide technology. Number 7, don't regret, just reverse.
Let's review. We're not going to talk about traffic or weather. If anyone brings up lawn care, I will handle it. Hosting can be extremely difficult for young homeowners turning into their parents.
Oh, are you done with this? I'll just take that.
Okay. He's still drinking.
Right. Oh, look what the cat...
Nope. Let's try again. You wouldn't mind? It gets ugly. You can either take it off or I'll take it off you. Yeah.
Progressive can't protect you from becoming your parents, but we can protect your home and auto when you bundle with us.
You loved it. Take it.
Want it.
The Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor tracks your glucose in real time. And over time, it can help lower your A1C. This is progress. Learn more and try for free at freestylelibre.us.
Ahead, there were big concerns heading into this election about disinformation and other threats to our voting system. David Becker will join us next, tell us how the system held up. Plus, we'll take a look at how Georgia flipped back to the Republican side. You're watching CBS Mornings. We thank you for that. We'll be right back.
An alternative to pills, Voltaren is a clinically proven arthritis pain relief gel which penetrates deep to target the source of pain with non-steroidal anti-inflammatory medicine directly at the source. Voltaren, the joy of movement.
Still have symptoms from moderate to severe ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease after a TNF blocker like Humira or Remicade? Put them in check with Rinvoq. Rinvoq works differently and it's a once-daily pill.
When symptoms tried to take control, I got rapid relief with Rinvoq. Check.
When flares tried to slow me down, I got lasting steroid-free remission with Rinvoq. Check.
And when my doctor saw damage, Rinvoq helped visibly reduce damage of the intestinal lining. Check.
Rapid symptom relief, lasting steroid-free remission.
And visibly reduced damage. Check, check, and check.
Rinvoq can lower your ability to fight infections, including TB, serious infections and blood clots, some fatal. Cancers, including lymphoma and skin. Heart attack, stroke, and GI tears occurred. People 50 and older with a heart disease risk factor have an increased risk of death. Serious allergic reactions can occur. Tell your doctor if you are or may become pregnant.
Put UC and Crohn's in check and keep them there with Rinvoq.
Ask your gastroenterologist about Rinvoq and learn how AbbVie can help you save.
At Ashley, it's not just Black Friday. It's the Ashley stain-resistant fabric Where Have You Been All My Life Black Friday event. But don't wait. It's also the Ashley You Can Save Up to $1,000 store-wide Black Friday event.
Many remedies you take for chest congestion only mask the symptoms. You're gonna love this property.
Try this.
Mucinex 12-Hour treats the mucus that causes chest congestion for all-day relief. Mucinex in, mucus out. Treat the cause.
It's gonna be...
Thanksgiving can be a time to come together, but for some, putting food on the table can be a challenge.
So Arizona's Family is asking for your help to change that. Visit your local Fry's food store now through November 26th to help thousands receive a turkey just by donating $10 at the register. Save your receipt and get 10% off one grocery order from November 29th through December 1st.
Together, let's donate thousands of turkeys to hungry families.
Sponsored by Fry's Food Stores, only on Arizona's Family.
All right, this week on Game Plan, we've got the head coach, Jonathan Gannon, as the Cardinals. They took the wind out of the Windy City, Wolf.
Stop it, Ball.
What's it going to take to win 4 straight and the film room?
Tonight at 6:30 on Arizona's Family, CBS 5.
Mornings have a lot going on. So in breaking news,
Could impact your day. Make your mornings count.
Good Morning Arizona, weekdays from 4:30 to 7 a.m. on Arizona's Family, CBS 5.
Hey, cord cutters. Did you know you can get great Arizona's Family content free and on demand? Get the app on Roku or Fire Stick. It's free to download.
And it's simple to set up.
Watch live breaking news, your first alert weather and traffic, and all the local programming you love. If you want help, we'll walk you through it step by step.
So if you've cut the cord, download Arizona's Family app today. Just visit azfamily.com/app.
Thank you.
When they tabulate all this, I am very hopeful that we're going to have not only a larger majority in the House to make my job easier, but we retake the Senate and the White House as well. I think that's what's going to happen.
Now, that's House Speaker Mike Johnson expressing high hopes before many of the results were in for yesterday's election. And it's looking like his prediction is coming true, at least for the Senate. Scott McFarland has been working long hours keeping track of all of this and joins us now to bring us up to date. Scott, good morning to you. So what are your thoughts on what Capitol Hill is going to look like come January?
Hey, Gail, good morning. Trump's going to have some muscle in the U.S. Senate. I want to bring up the U.S. Senate and show you where we are as this morning begins. Republicans hit that magic number. They needed either 50 or 51 seats. Democrats were trying to nurse this very narrow majority. They stepped in quicksand early in the evening, and they sunk deeper and deeper in the quicksand as Tuesday evening progressed. West Virginia's Democratic Senate seat is going to go to the Republican contender, two-term Governor Jim Justice. He wins, and as you can see from those numbers, he won big. In Ohio, the neighboring state, Democrats were trying to nurse their Senate seat there with three-term incumbent Sherrod Brown, who served in the U.S. House previously and literally wrote a book about Congress. Sherrod Brown projected to lose to the Republican Bernie Moreno. Arizona was a spot where Democrats were able to play defense last night. The Phoenix area Congressman Ruben Gallego looks like he'll hold that seat, defeating Kerry Lake, who lost the governor's race in Arizona 2 years earlier. But Democrats still face a murderer's row of races to try to minimize the damage here. In Michigan, a competitive race between two people challenging for a retiree spot. Democrat Alyssa Slotkin and the Republican is Mike Rogers. Mike Rogers, a former member of Congress. Slotkin serves in Congress now. In Nevada, Jackie Rosen trying to hold off the Republican challenger Sam Brown. In Pennsylvania, another one of those battleground presidential races, Bob Casey's trying to hold off Dave McCormick. You see how close these numbers are. You see how close these margins are. And in Wisconsin, another Democratic seat, another incumbent trying to protect this seat for her party. Tammy Baldwin with a slight edge now over Eric Hovde. Oh, by the way, control of the U.S. House is also up for grabs. And at this point, it's too close to call. Narrow margins, a very slim set of battleground seats. The magic number here, 218. Democrats made some inroads in New York. Let me just show you one or two. New York's 4th District on Long Island leans Democrat. That would be a win from Republicans. New York's 19th District, upstate. Democrats appear poised to win that one back from Republicans, but the Republicans, Nate, made inroads in those presidential battleground states. In Michigan, in the 7th District, they appear poised to win a Democratic seat. And in Pennsylvania, not one, but 2 seats. The 8th District in Scranton and the 7th District in Allentown appear poised to flip. Republicans are bullish on their prospects of winning the House, too.
All right, Scott, thank you so much. As we unpack Election Day and spin things forward, we're going to look at what President Trump's priorities might be when he takes office. Stick around. You're watching CBS Mornings.
These are the stories
1, 2, 3, go!
Of we, the people.
We're trying to generate our own hope.
It's a huge deal.
I'm enabling them to feel valued.
Eye on America. Weeknights on the CBS Evening News with Norah O'Donnell.
Use CBS Tonight.
She's trying to put a target on me.
At some point, we're going to have to cut the head off Snake.
Buckle up. We're about to start playing.
Nobody is safe.
The Summit. Stream the first 5 episodes on Paramount Plus and catch an all-new episode CBS Tonight after Survivor.
Substance use disorder and addiction is so isolating. And so, as a Black woman in recovery, hope must be loud. It grows louder when you ask for help and you're vulnerable. It is the thread that lets you know that no matter what happens, you will be okay.
I'm Belinda, and this is Willard, and we were adopted in 2021. When we first met Todd, he was singing a song, and I was like, wow, look at this kid with the biggest smile, and he has a big heart to match.
The energy you give Todd, you get it back from Todd.
Yeah.
Todd's a joy.
Yes,
Todd
he is.
really is a great joy.
I love him. You and you.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org.
When I grow up, I want to be a director because they get to talk to everybody about everything. They get to make cool movies and dance music videos. Action!
If your child is sick over and over again, it could be PI, a defect of the immune system that affects millions. Early testing can give children a chance to dream.
And when I'm a director, I get to say, lights,